She was mopping the lobby floor when the CTO overheard her speaking fluently in Mandarin, Spanish, and French, as if each were her native tongue. What happened next left the entire company in shock. Most employees at Pinnacle Solutions barely noticed the cleaning crew, not out of malice, but from routine. They arrived after hours, pushing carts, swapping trash bags, wiping down boardroom tables, blending into the background like elevator music. On a Monday morning in downtown Denver, Colorado, the company's main lobby buzzed with the clatter of shoes on marble, people on phones discussing deadlines, clutching coffee cups as if they held life's answers. Michael Davidson, the CEO, caught the sound as he walked from the parking garage to his 20th floor corner office. It was a voice, but not just any voice. Clear, confident, speaking a language he hadn't heard since his last trip to the Beijing branch. Mandarin. It stopped him cold, not because it was Mandarin, but because of who was speaking it. He scanned the room, expecting perhaps an early arriving global sales rep. But then he saw her, a woman in a Navy janitorial uniform, her dark hair pulled into a neat bun, standing by the lobby's digital directory. She was chatting with an older man in a gray jacket and thick glasses, who seemed both confused and grateful. She gestured calmly, her voice warm yet firm, guiding him toward the elevators. Davidson squinted. He'd seen her before, passing her in the halls after late meetings, always polite, always quiet, never meeting his gaze unless spoken to. He didn't even know her name. Yet here she was, effortlessly translating and explaining office logistics in a language most Americans couldn't even pronounce correctly. He stepped closer. As he approached, she finished her Mandarin conversation and turned to a delivery guy holding a tablet blaring music. She switched to Spanish without missing a beat. The courier blinked, nodded, and muttered, "Gracias." Then, just as casually, she turned to a vendor nearby, puzzling over a stack of mislabeled boxes. "Tell them meeting room B is marked as Lot B," she said in French, pointing with a slight smile. Davidson's jaw tightened, not in anger, but in something else, something sharper, like guilt. He'd spent over 2 decades in global logistics, overseeing international expansions, hiring interpreters, building cultural training programs. Yet here, in his own building, the most linguistically gifted person he'd met in years was scrubbing floors 2 levels below his office. He stepped forward, curiosity outweighing authority. "Excuse me?" She turned, startled but composed. "Yes, sir?" He offered a small smile. "That was Mandarin, wasn't it?" "Yes, sir." "You speak it fluently?" "Yes." "And Spanish, French?" She nodded. "I also read Portuguese, German, Arabic, Italian, Swahili, and Latin, but that last one doesn't count." He blinked. "You're saying you speak 9 languages?" "Yes, sir." Her tone held no pride, no arrogance, just the truth, steady as a steel beam. He stared at her for a moment, grappling with the fact that the janitor in his building, the woman who silently mopped floors each night, was a walking United Nations. "What's your name?" he finally asked. "Sarah Mitchell." "Ms. Mitchell, do you have a few minutes?" Her eyebrow arched slightly. "Now?" "Yes, I'd like to speak with you in my office." He saw hesitation flicker across her face. Not fear, but the reflex of someone used to being overlooked or underestimated. She nodded slowly. "All right." He pressed the elevator button and held the door for her. Inside, silence hung briefly. "I've worked here for 15 years," she said suddenly, as they ascended to the executive floor. He turned to her. "Never thought I'd get an invite up here." He gave a faint smile. "You might be surprised how fast things can change." He had no idea how much would change. For her? For him. The elevator dinged. Sarah stepped out first, her sneakers silent on the polished hardwood of the executive corridor. It smelled of leather and citrus. Money, if it had a scent. Davidson's assistant gaped at seeing Sarah beside him. He offered no explanation, just nodded for her to let them pass. Inside his glass-walled office, he gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Please, sit." She sat cautiously, hands folded in her lap, scanning the room slowly. Not impressed, just observant. Behind him hung a world map, countries marked with colored pins. On a side table sat a tray of espresso cups, a photo of his 2 sons, and a dusty award from a trade summit in Chicago. Davidson sat opposite her, leaning forward slightly. "So, Sarah, I'll be honest, I didn't expect to have a conversation like this today." She nodded faintly, her posture still, her face unreadable. "But I just heard you switch between 3 languages like flipping switches. I need to understand how someone like you is mopping floors here." She didn't answer right away. Her gaze flicked to the window, then back to him. "You got time for the truth?" "I wouldn't ask otherwise." She sighed, rubbing her palms together as if warming up the words. "I was born in Cleveland, Ohio, only child. My dad was a mechanic, my mom a nurse's aide. They didn't have much, but they pushed education like it was gospel. I earned a full ride to Ohio State, majored in linguistics, was halfway through a master's when my mom got sick. I came home to care for her. Then my dad had a heart attack 6 months later. Everything fell apart after that." She paused, tilting her head as if rewinding memories. "I had a kid, no money, no partner who stuck around. So I worked wherever I could. Grocery stores, nursing homes, temp jobs. Eventually, a friend got me night shifts here. It let me pick up my daughter from school, keep the lights on. That's how I ended up here." Davidson watched her, unblinking, just listening. "But the languages, I never stopped. I borrowed books, listened to tapes, read newspapers in 6 different languages to stay sharp. It's what I do. It's the one thing that makes me feel like I still matter." Her voice didn't waver. Plain, not poetic. "Most people never asked," she added. "They saw the uniform and assumed." The word hung there. Assumed. Davidson leaned back, her story settling in his chest like a weight. She cleared her throat. "Look, Mr. Davidson, I'm not saying this to make anyone feel bad. I'm not bitter. Life happened. I did what I had to. You asked, and that's the answer." He exhaled slowly. Sarah Mitchell was brilliant. It was obvious now. But she wasn't asking for pity or a handout. She was stating facts, clear and raw. "Ever thought about doing something else?" he asked. She shrugged slightly. "Sometimes. But it's hard to dream when rent's due." Silence fell, heavier now, charged with something unspoken but powerful. Davidson reached for a notepad, jotted a few lines. "What are you writing?" she asked, her voice steady but tinged with curiosity. He looked up. "Ideas." One was already forming, and it wasn't small. That conversation haunted him all day, through budget reviews and supplier calls. Michael Davidson's mind kept drifting back to that morning, to Sarah Mitchell, to how she listed 9 languages like they were nothing. That kind of fluency didn't just happen. It took years of discipline, curiosity, and grit. Around 4 p.m., he left the executive floor and took the elevator to the building service level. He wanted to see something for himself. Down there, the air was warmer, the walls scuffed from carts and boots. He passed maintenance crews, break rooms, stacks of bottled water, and finally reached the janitorial closet. Through the open door, he saw Sarah restocking microfiber cloths on a metal shelf. "Mind if I interrupt again?" he asked, stepping inside. She startled slightly. "You came down here?" He smiled. "Couldn't stop thinking about our talk. I've got a request." She wiped her hands on her shirt. "What kind?" "Upstairs. There's a meeting. A team from our São Paulo office showed up early, and our interpreter canceled last minute. Can you help?" She hesitated for a second. "Portuguese?" "Yeah, I can do that." Minutes later, they were in conference room 3B. 4 Brazilian executives sat awkwardly, scrolling their phones. Sarah entered quietly, nodded, and started speaking fluent, confident Portuguese. Davidson watched the room shift, shoulders relaxed, eyes sharpened. She wasn't just translating. She was building trust, making people feel seen. When one visitor cracked a joke in Portuguese, Sarah laughed and fired one back, sparking chuckles around the table. Davidson didn't understand a word, but he felt the connection. 20 minutes later, the meeting wrapped. One executive turned to him and said in English, "She's the best we've worked with this year." "Where'd you find her?" Davidson glanced at Sarah, who was already stacking empty cups on a tray. "Right here," he said. Back in the hallway, he caught up with her. "Ever done professional interpreting before?" She shook her head. "Just helped out at hospitals, DMVs, places like that. No certification, no time for it. My daughter needed me more." Davidson nodded. "Where's she now?" "She's 28, a nurse in Phoenix. Paid for school herself, stubborn like her mom." They both smiled, and for a moment it wasn't a CEO and a janitor, just 2 people talking life. They returned to the service level where Sarah resumed her tasks. She had 2 more floors to clean before her shift ended, but before he left, she said something that stuck with him. "I didn't do anything special today." He raised his eyebrows. "Felt pretty special to me." She gave a small smile and walked away. That night, Davidson sat in his car for a long time before driving home. He thought about everything: the pressure to grow, investor meetings, endless talks about diversity, and untapped talent. They'd been looking outward, recruiting globally, chasing fresh blood. But sometimes the gold was already in your backyard. The real question was, what do you do with it? The next morning, Sarah's badge beeped at an odd hour. She'd just finished wiping down the east lobby when her supervisor, Tom, tapped her shoulder with a look that wasn't annoyed, but wasn't normal either. "Hey, Sarah, Mr. Davidson wants to see you again." She blinked. "Did I do something wrong?" Tom shook his head. "He didn't say, just told me to send you up." She dried her hands on a towel and took the same route as the day before. This time, the building seemed to notice her. People glanced up as she passed. One receptionist even smiled, like she knew something Sarah didn't. In the executive office, Davidson stood by the window, sipping black coffee, staring at the Denver skyline. "Come in," he said without turning. She stood quietly by the door until he faced her. "I've been thinking," he said, setting his mug down, "about wasted talent. How many people never get a shot, not because they're not good, but because no one looks twice?" Sarah stayed silent. She didn't trust easy praise. She'd seen too many people talk big and deliver little. "I want to create a new role," he continued, "one we didn't know we needed until now." Her brow furrowed. "For what?" "Cultural liaison for global affairs. Someone who can speak the languages, read between the lines, handle visitors, vendors, documents, all the international touch points we keep fumbling." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. "You're qualified," he said. "Maybe more than most of our leadership team, honestly. You've already shown you can handle it with grace, patience, and smarts." She stared at him, eyes narrowing slightly. "Is this for real?" "As real as it gets. I don't have a college degree. You've got something better: life experience, dedication, and fluency in 9 languages. You think I care about a piece of paper?" She shifted her weight, still unsure. "Why me?" He looked her in the eye. "Because I saw you solve 3 problems in 3 languages before 9 a.m. yesterday, and because I'm tired of walking past people like you, people who do twice the work for half the credit." Sarah crossed her arms. "You know what people will say." "I don't care." She studied him for a long moment, then exhaled slowly. "I've never had an office job," she said. "Never had a title. You'll learn fast. I don't have clothes for this. I'll have HR send over a wardrobe stipend." She gave a dry laugh. "You've got it all figured out, huh?" "I'm trying." A long pause hung between them. Then Sarah asked quietly, "What about my shift downstairs? Who's covering that?" Davidson smiled. "We'll find someone, but no one's replacing you." Neither spoke for a moment. She looked at her hands, then back at him. "You sure this isn't some kind of favor?" He shook his head. "It's overdue recognition." Her eyes glistened, but she blinked back tears before they fell. "All right then," she said, voice firm. "Let's see what I can do." He extended his hand. She shook it. It wasn't just a handshake. It was a story being rewritten. But neither expected how the rest of the building would react. By Wednesday, the news spread faster than the elevators. Sarah Mitchell, the night shift janitor, had been promoted to a leadership role. No one knew the full story, just whispers, that she spoke multiple languages, that the CEO handpicked her, that she might have some secret past, maybe even undercover government work. Gossip jumped from cubicles to boardrooms. Some were curious. Some smiled and said, "Good for her." But not everyone clapped. In the staff break room, 2 marketing assistants leaned over their sandwiches. "I'm just saying," one whispered, "I've got an MBA in global business, and I've been waiting for a promotion for 3 years. This woman was cleaning bathrooms last week." Her friend shrugged. "Maybe she knows something we don't." "Oh, come on. It's Davidson trying to look woke, checking a box." That same energy seeped into meeting rooms and Slack channels. Quiet resentment mixed with confusion. People weren't used to promotions bypassing the usual ladder. Sarah felt it the moment she stepped into her new office on the 14th floor. It was modest, a desk, a plant, a computer she hadn't touched yet. But to her, It felt like another planet. When HR finished onboarding her, she asked if she could keep her old janitorial badge. Not to wear, but to remember what it took to get here. That same day, she met with James, the head of international operations. He walked in with a tablet and tense eyes, didn't shake her hand, didn't sit. "So, you're the new liaison," he said, like it was a joke dressed as courtesy. Sarah looked up. "That's what they tell me." "Got any corporate experience?" She smiled. "Only from the outside looking in." He didn't laugh. "I've got reports from Spain, contracts from our partners in Dubai, and a mess with vendors in Sao Paulo. Think you can handle it?" She stood. "Give me a few hours to dig in, but yeah." James dropped a folder on her desk and left. Later that evening, Davidson stopped by her office. "How's day one?" She exhaled, leaning back in her chair. "I've had worse." He grinned. "James giving you a hard time?" "He doesn't scare me." "Didn't think so." She paused, then added, "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Why now? Why me? You could have just given me a bonus and moved on." He leaned against the door frame. "Because I saw myself in you." She raised an eyebrow. "You were a janitor?" "No, but I was overlooked plenty. Came from nothing. My dad fixed trucks in a town no one's heard of. Worked 3 jobs through college. People thought I didn't belong in rooms like this." Sarah nodded slowly. "Now you decide who gets in." He nodded back. "Exactly." A quiet moment passed before Sarah glanced at the folder on her desk. "I'm nervous," she admitted. "Good. Means you care." She looked up again. "Some people won't like this. They'll get over it or they won't. Either way, we're moving forward." Davidson straightened. "You've got a story, Sarah. A real one. Now you've got a platform." He turned to leave. As the door clicked shut, Sarah surveyed her office. She remembered years of crying in bathroom stalls during lunch breaks, nights coming home with aching feet, barely enough energy to heat soup, birthdays she missed, promotions she watched go to people who didn't even say good morning. She opened her desk drawer and tucked her old badge inside, a reminder of what it took to get here. But her story wasn't just hers anymore, and the spotlight was about to get brighter. By the end of the week, Sarah's nameplate was up outside her office. Black letters on brushed steel. Sarah Mitchell, Cultural Liaison, Global Affairs. It looked official, clean, permanent. The news went company-wide via an email from Davidson on Friday morning. Short, clear, and heavy. He explained her role, her background, and, most importantly, her value. He didn't frame it as charity or a feel-good gesture. He made it clear she was the best person for the job. Period. But that didn't stop the noise. Some managers muttered under their breath. Others softened, seeing her in action. She handled foreign clients better than software. She caught translation errors in old contracts that had cost them money for years. And she never showed off, just worked quietly, smoothly, better than anyone expected. On Monday, Sarah was called to a meeting with a delegation from Morocco. The company's North African expansion had stalled for months over miscommunications and distrust. She walked in wearing a soft gray blazer, sat at the table, and introduced herself in fluent Moroccan Arabic. The room shifted. You could feel it. People leaned in. They listened. Because when someone speaks your language, you don't just hear words. You hear respect. After the meeting, one Moroccan partner approached her privately. touching his chest in a traditional gesture of gratitude. "No one's ever done this for us," he said. "Not like this." Sarah nodded. "You matter. That's all." Midweek, Davidson took another step. He renamed the company's main training room, where new hires gathered for orientation and mid-level managers held workshops. The old plaque came down. In its place, the Mitchell Room. No fanfare, no party. Just a quiet marker that meant more than flowers or cake. Later that day, Davidson stood outside the room watching a new batch of interns file in. He overheard one whisper, "Who's Mitchell?" A senior employee replied, "She reminded this place that greatness doesn't always wear a suit." That same day, Sarah found a sealed envelope on her desk. No return address, just her name in neat print. Inside, a note. "I thought I'd be invisible forever. Today, I stand a little taller because of you. Thank you." No signature, just proof that people were watching, people who needed to see what was possible. Sarah sat, staring at the words, her throat tight. She didn't cry. She didn't need to. That moment told her this wasn't just a job, it was a door. But not every door opens without a fight, and someone was already planning to push back. The backlash came late Thursday. Sarah was summoned to a meeting, not by Davidson, but by someone higher up. Margaret Holt, a senior board member, had flown in from Dallas. She'd been with the company since the 90s. Sharp suits, sharper tongue. Sarah entered a small conference room on the 19th floor, where Margaret waited with a stack of papers and a blank stare. "Sit," she said, not looking up. Sarah sat. Margaret tapped her pen twice. "So, Ms. Mitchell, I've reviewed your file. No college degree, no prior corporate training, no management certifications." Sarah didn't flinch. "That's right." Margaret folded her hands. 3 weeks ago, you were a janitor here. Help me understand how someone with your background is now handling high-level global affairs." Sarah met her gaze. "Because I speak the languages, I understand the cultures. I've already closed 2 vendor contracts and cleared a 3-month delay on our Morocco deal. I also secured a verbal agreement with our Brazilian partners, finalized next week." Margaret's lips pursed. "You think this company should run on instinct and charm?" Sarah gave a faint smile. "No, ma'am. Results." Margaret blinked, the first time Sarah saw her waver. "I don't need to be liked," Sarah added, "but I need to be useful, and I am." Margaret stood, slowly closing her folder. "You're a gamble." "I'm used to that," Sarah said softly. "My whole life has been." When the meeting ended, Sarah didn't return to her office right away. She left the building, sat on a bench across the street, and stared at the glass tower where she now worked. For years, she'd passed this building in the same uniform, carrying cleaning supplies, wondering if anyone saw her. Now they all did, and some didn't like it. She pulled out her phone and called her daughter. "Hey, Mom," her daughter answered. "Everything okay?" Sarah hesitated, then nodded to herself. "Yeah, just needed to hear your voice." "You sure?" "I'm sure." They talked for a few minutes. Groceries, her daughter's cat, a new movie she wanted to see. The sound of her laughter steadied Sarah. After hanging up, she sat quietly, then stood, crossed the street, and rode the elevator back to her floor. By the next morning, rumors of the meeting with Margaret Holt had leaked. To everyone's surprise, Sarah didn't back down. She arrived early, led a team briefing, called the German office without an interpreter, calm, collected, unshaken. That same day, a handwritten note appeared on the board outside her office. "We see you." No name, just 3 words that meant everything. In the weeks that followed, something shifted. People came to her not just for translations, but for advice, guidance, confidence. She became the person you ran ideas by before pitching them. She sat with interns, coaching them before big presentations, never talking down to anyone. One intern, a quiet Vietnamese kid named Min, asked, "How'd you learn all those languages?" She smiled. "1 word at a time. Same as you." Sarah wasn't just doing her job, she was changing the culture. One afternoon, Davidson joined her for coffee in the break room. He said he'd heard good things. She sipped her cup, trying to ignore the bad. "You're making waves." She looked at him. "Is that good?" He grinned. "Around here. Means you're doing something right." They stood in silence for a moment. "You know," he added, "I'm thinking about starting a training program for internal talent, especially people in non-professional roles." Sarah nodded. "There are more like me out there. They just haven't been seen yet." He looked at her. "Want to help me build it?" She smiled. "It's already started in my head." By month's end, a pilot program launched. Called Voices. Within, it gave workers from every department access to language training, leadership mentoring, and cross-departmental job transparency. It was Sarah's idea, and it made waves. Eventually, she was invited to speak at a logistics leadership summit in Atlanta. She told her story not as inspiration, but as a reality check. "I was never just a janitor," she told the crowd. "I was fluent. I was capable. I was ready." But no one looked long enough to see it. So next time you pass someone without a title, ask yourself, what are you missing? The room went quiet, then erupted in applause. As she left, a young man approached, eyes wet. "My mom's a housekeeper," he said. "She speaks 4 languages. I used to be embarrassed to say that." Sarah touched his arm. "Never be ashamed of where you come from. The only shame is staying blind to brilliance." She walked out of that building taller than ever, not because of the applause or the promotion, but because she didn't change herself to fit the role. She brought her whole story with her, and that made all the difference. Never assume you can size someone up by their clothes, their job, or their resume. Talent doesn't have a dress code. Intelligence doesn't need permission. And brilliance can pass you by with a badge on their chest and a mop in their hands. If you've ever been unseen, underestimated, or ignored, keep going. The right person will see you. And when they do, don't be afraid to take your seat at the table. Better yet, bring a few extra chairs.